And listen to the bell all the way down. Come on, Tara. Welcome, everyone. Let's begin with our reading, 12 Buddhist precepts. And these are actually ethical guidelines that Buddhists choose. It's the way that they are in the world. Buddhism is not really a religion about beliefs. It's really about how you choose to be in the world. So here are these 12 Buddhist precepts. I vow not to commit evil. I vow to cultivate goodness. I vow to help others. I vow not to kill, but to cherish all life. I vow not to steal, but to respect that which belongs to others. I vow not to misuse sexual energy, but to be honest and respectful. I vow not to lie, but to speak the truth. I vow not to misuse drugs or alcohol, but to keep the mind clear. I vow not to gossip about others' faults, but to be understanding and sympathetic. I vow not to praise myself by criticizing others, but to overcome my own shortcomings. I vow not to withhold spiritual or material aid, but to give it freely when needed. And finally, I vow not to unleash anger, but to seek its source. 12 Buddhist precepts.
Good morning. This is the point in the service that we call the gathering song, and I love that it's called the gathering song because we're gathering. So let's stand in body or spirit, and let's sing together, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Because today is going to be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Let me take a seat.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Central Oregon. I'm Marian Jordan, and I'll be your worship leader this morning. We hope you'll find comfort, connection, and challenge, and love here. We are one people of diverse beliefs, backgrounds, cultural contexts, sexualities, and genders. We are growing and learning together. Just as you are, you're welcome here. Our speaker this morning is Tom Wykes. Tom describes himself as culturally Christian, Unitarian Universalist, and with a Zen Buddhist practice. He enjoys gardening, reading, and looking for springs. Tom is a longtime member of this fellowship. We're on our summer schedule, and we're pleased to welcome our young people to the entire service. The spirit of loving community connects us all, and there are rugs in the front and the back corners of the sanctuary for quiet activities for families who need a more relaxed space, and our RE area is also open if you need to take a break. Our service includes singing and stories, but also quieter times for meditation and reflection, and a bell will sound to start and end that quiet period. The words of our chalice lighting this morning will be offered by Verlene Arnold and Judy Trask lighting the chalice. And they're on their way.
Apparently, there are alternate schedules today. This morning, we light this chalice to find inner peace, love for each other, and faith in ourselves. Also, to be welcoming to whomever we meet, and kind to all living creatures. So gather around this light of hope as we share this time together.
Now please stand in body or spirit, and we'll sing our chalice lighting words, Spirit of Life. You may be seated. So, now is our time for all ages. So I want to invite all the young and young at heart up to the rug or to the steps to hear a story together. Hello, you all. Welcome. We're glad to see you. My friend Tom and I have a story to share this morning. And this is a story about a boy named Nikolai and how a turtle helped him answer some big questions he had. So the story is called The Three Questions, and it's written and illustrated by John Muth, and you can see it on the screen as well. You can see his wonderful illustrations. So here we go. There was once a boy named Nikolai who sometimes felt confused about the right way to act. I want to be a good person, he told his friends, but I don't always know the best way to do that. If I could only find the answers to 3 questions I have, then I would always know the right thing to do. So here are Nikolai's 3 questions. When is the best thing to do things? Who is the most important one? And what is the right thing to do? Those are big questions. Nikolai thought for a long while about these questions, and then an idea came to him. I know, he thought, I'll ask Leo the turtle. He has lived a very long time. Surely he will know the answers I am looking for. So Nikolai hiked high up into the mountains where the old turtle lived, all alone. And when Nikolai arrived, he found Leo digging in a garden, which is a very familiar thing for this turtle to do. The turtle was old, and digging was very hard for him. I have 3 questions, and I came to ask for your help, Nikolai said. When is the best time to do things? Who is the most important one? And what is the right thing to do? Leo listened carefully, but he only smiled. Then he went on digging. You must be tired, Nikolai said at last, so let me help you. And the turtle gave him the shovel and thanked him. And because it was easier for the young boy to dig than it was for the old turtle, Nikolai kept digging until the rows were finished. But just as he finished, the wind blew wildly, and the rain came, and the clouds were dark. And as they moved toward the cottage for shelter, Nikolai suddenly heard a cry for help. Wonder what that could be. Running down the path, he found a panda whose leg had been injured by a fallen tree. Carefully, Nikolai carried her into Leo's house and made a splint for her, for her leg, and with a stick of bamboo. The storm raged on, banging at the doors and the windows, and the panda woke up. "Where am I?" she said. "And where is my child?" Well, Nikolai ran out of the cottage and down the path. The roar of the storm was deafening. Pushing against the howling wind and the drenching rain, he ran farther and farther into the forest. And then he found the panda's child, cold and shivering on the ground. The little panda was wet and scared, but alive, and so Nikolai carried her inside and made her warm and dry. And then he laid her in her mother's arms. And Leo the turtle smiled when he saw what Nikolai had done. The next morning, it was a day just like today is for us. The sun was warm and the birds sang, and all was well with the world. The panda's leg was healing, and she thanked Nikolai for saving her and her baby from the storm. So Nikolai felt great peace within himself. He'd saved the panda and her child, but he also felt disappointed. He still hadn't found the answers to his 3 questions, so he asked Leo one more time, and the turtle looked at the boy.
But Nikolai, your questions have already been answered.
They have?
Yes. Yesterday, if you had not stayed to help me dig my garden, you wouldn't have heard the panda's cry for help. Therefore, the most important time was the time you spent digging in the garden. The most important one at that moment was me. And the most important thing to do was to help me in my garden. But later, when you found the injured panda, the most important time was the time you spent mending her leg and saving her child. The most important ones were the panda and her baby. And the most important thing to do was to take care of them and to make them safe. And that's what spiritual helpers do. They do what's needed to be done. So remember then that there is only one important time, and that time is now. The most important one is the one you are with. And the most important thing to do is to do good with the one standing next to you. For these, my dear boy, are the answers to what is most important in this world. This is why we're here, to do what needs to be done. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Turtle. And the message of the story is actually very similar to what is expressed in our children's covenant. So let's all say it together. In this place, I am kind. In this place, I am loving. In this place, I am a friend to the earth and all animals and people. In this place, I am loved. So you're welcome to go back to where you were sitting if you choose to, or continue to sit on the rug.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Chayla Sloper, the Congregational Life Facilitator, and I have today's announcements. I want to begin by saying, for every summer day that we see blue skies and do not smell wildfire smoke here, I want to give thanks. I just want us to recognize these are becoming more and more precious experiences for us to go through summer, any distance, and just enjoy the clear air that we enjoy here in Central Oregon. So now, having said that, welcome everybody. And you've been welcomed before, and we just want to continue cultivating this environment, this atmosphere of welcome. For those who are with us on Zoom, if this is your first or second time, we have a virtual visitor form that will be dropped magically into the chat. Let us know that you're here. And that's also a way that you can sign up for our all congregation email. This is a weekly email. We call it the ACE, and it's kind of like a newsletter. It's a way to stay in touch with what's going on. The skyline that you have in your hands today is a short version of what's current and what's coming up right away. And for those who are here, if this is also if you are new or new-ish to UUFCO, our Connections team is happy to answer your questions. They're always in the Connections corner, which is in the southwest corner of the gathering hall. And so they're always there after the service if you have any questions. Thank you for all those who donated food or money today for the Nourish food drive. They collect produce, perishables, and that often also includes protein. I was looking at some figures that Ginny McKee had about the homelessness issue in Central Oregon from January. At that time, there were over 1,000 people who were unsheltered. And I know that homelessness and food insecurity are related topics. And I'm not good at word problems, but if we have 100,000 people in Bend, that's a tenth. Isn't that a tenth? So that's like a lot of people. What's that? 100th? 1%. I knew it was something like that. But thank you. See, yeah, I'm not good at word problems. Arithmetic was not my jam. But all the same, yeah, 1%. I see, thank you so much. I'm glad that there are people who love numbers. I really am. But anyway, so thank you for all that we're able to do and can do to help support our neighbors through these trying times. And also, may our world be transformed so that these chronic societal problems might find resolution. Today, Tom Wykes invites you to a discussion after the service in Linus Pauling, just to continue with the thoughts that he'll be sharing during the sermon. And really excited that all folks in our cleverly named XYZ group, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, this Friday night, there's going to be a deeper discussion hosted by two of our members, Shauna Edwards and Jeff Belzer. They are both actually Belzer Edwards, but they invite you 6:30 Friday night, July 14th, in the Founders Fireside Room. That's also the library. Something about our founders and the history of the denomination. We've been in existence since 1958, but we only started getting ministerial support in 2003, 2004, and then in 2007, our congregation had the very good, blessed fortune of welcoming a particular individual, Heather Ryan Starr, and she will be greeting us this morning briefly. But I just want to say that Heather was one of the people, well, she hired me, but, and Tom was on the committee that hired her on behalf of the congregation. So the vision keeps going forward. It was during the time that Reverend Heather was our minister here that we got word of the generous gift coming our way that is now in this the location where we are. She was here at a really important time of our development. And as I bless you for your summer day, I introduce the Reverend Heather Ryan Starr.
Thanks for giving me a chance to say hello, Chela. It's just amazing to be here. It's amazing and it's moving. I am sad about hearing about Ellen Mercer's death earlier this year. I didn't know about that, so I'm still processing that. Anyway, I was here from 2006 to 2012 as the minister of the congregation. At that time, we were meeting at the Old Stone Church, which was once a Presbyterian church, which has the Bend stained glass in it that's now the logo all over town and is now a web cyclery and gear shop. I mean, we're hoping to maybe be able to duck our head in there tomorrow and stand on the chancel if it exists with the bicycles. Anyway, change is a part of life. It's amazing to come back and see this incredible congregation and bring my family here. My spouse, Kathy, is here, was up for story time with our younger kid, Braden. Kathy works full-time for the Unitarian Universalist Association Side with Love campaign. So if any of you get involved with You the Vote or Side with Love efforts, you may work with Kathy, who coordinates volunteers across the country on their various issue campaigns. I'm serving full-time as the minister of a congregation in southern Delaware in Lewis, my 10th state of residence, somewhere else I never thought I'd ever end up living. Didn't even know how to spell Delaware like 4 years ago. But we love it, and there's so many parallels between Sussex County, Delaware, and Deschutes County, Oregon. Like, I think of this congregation all the time. They went to Trump in the last election, but there's a growing population of active retirees moving there from Baltimore, Philadelphia, and DC. Lots of folks coming in who are looking around for a UU congregation. The congregation there just got started 24 years ago, so it's growing rapidly, and there's just a surge of good energy coming in, and that reminds me of this congregation every day. So I am grateful to be here. Let me just also say my older kid, Robin, who I was pregnant with when I left here, is with me today. She's pretty much 11, and the younger one, Braden, is 6, and it's just a delight to be here and see you all, and thanks for all your support for this amazing community all these years. Oh, here, Kathy and Braden. Were you trying to get my attention? No.
What a delight to have Heather and her family with us today. And one thing I would like to add, when Heather was with us, she was the one who made clear to us that if we didn't get serious about thinking about having our own building, we would not be able to grow. And so, Heather, thank you for lighting a fire under us to get busy and think about that. On Sundays, we receive an offering to support the programs and ministries of this congregation. The ritual of passing the basket is a reminder that our generosity is an expression of our love, and that our love impacts lives. If today's your first time with us, however, you're welcome to pass the basket on, because your presence is your gift to us.
Good morning. My name is Greg Byrne, and I'm a member of the pastoral care team. Information about our team can be found on the kiosk in the gathering hall. Do you need someone to talk to? Someone to listen? Somebody to perhaps take a walk with or get a cup of coffee? One of the ways we connect in loving community is to share our times of joy and sorrow. Forms for writing these are on the kiosk as well. You can find forms on the web to submit in advance of the service. As we enter this time of sharing joys and sorrows, please feel free to light a candle in the tray on either side of the sanctuary for ones you're holding in your heart. Excuse me. We're full of joy today. From the Nourish team, we're joyful that today's collection of perishables includes our first harvest from the UU Nourish Community Garden at Holland's Head. Thank you all for your donations today. They will go to the Bethlehem Inn, St. Vincent de Paul, and Family Kitchen. From Flora J. Patrick, joyful for this beautiful summer in Central Oregon. Couldn't think of a better place to live. I'm going to insert a joy. My sister-in-law is scheduled for kidney transplant on Tuesday. And finally, from Heather McNeil, Jamie Rose was one of 5 selected to speak about the Peace Corps when the director of the Peace Corps visits Guatemala this Thursday. Proud is the word. Allow these words to linger in your heart and spirit.
This is a talk on Buddhism. We do meditation. It won't be too painful, however, I hope. But I will encourage you to find a comfortable spot in your chair with your feet on the floor and your back relatively straight. And just relax. Relax. I'll ring the bell 3 times. Listen to the bell all the way down. I invite you to take a couple of breaths and just relax. The practice is one of alertness and relaxation. So I invite you to look for any places you may be holding tension in your body. A good way to start is just to drop your shoulders a bit. Relax the muscles in your chest, and particularly around your heart. Relax your belly. Let your belly hang out a little bit. We hold a lot of tension in our belly. Relax your waist, your hips. Relax your legs and your feet. And if you're holding any additional tension in your body, just let it drain from your body all the way through the soles of your feet, all the way deep into the earth. And relax. Bring your awareness to your breath. Notice that the breath rises on the inhale and falls on the exhale. The breath rises and the breath falls. Just notice that. And if your mind wanders into a thought or a story, that's not a problem. Just gently return to the breath. The breath rising and the breath falling. So natural. If you hear noise around you, such as children or coughing, voices, that's not a problem. Just be aware of that. Bring it into your practice. Everything is invited. Nothing is left out. Sometimes it's helpful to imagine the breath is like the waves at the beach. The waves come in and the waves go out. Just rest. And gently move your body around just a little bit. It feels good to move that body, even if you've just been sitting for 5 minutes. Don't be self-conscious around it. Just move it around a little bit. Okay, here we go. Good to be here. Good to have Heather here. So many fond memories. And as I look out at this group, I see a lot of wise turtles out here. A lot of old wise turtles. This is a very wise group. Very wise. It's not anything you've said or anything you've done, it's how you are. That's what wisdom is. Several years ago, this is a kind of a retro thing here. I don't know if anybody remembered elevator speeches, the infamous elevator speech. The whole idea about this was that, you meet somebody on an elevator and they're kind of curious about, what's your organization, what's your business, what's your religion? And so the idea is to try to condense that into something that is concise and accurate, that really gets to kind of the bones. And to do that in the 30 seconds it takes, to go from between one floor and the other. So that was kind of encouraged to kind of think about what your elevator speech might be. So if you were a UU, for example, your elevator speech might include the 7 principles. My elevator speech never included those because I could never remember them. I have to keep mine very short. So that's why my elevator speech for Buddhism is only 5 seconds. So it's Buddhism in a nutshell. So here is the core of Buddhist teachings from my perspective. If somebody else will have a different perspective. So the core of Buddhist teachings is composed of equal parts of wisdom and compassion with a dash of humor. Equal parts wisdom, compassion, a little humor. And so that's it, 5 seconds. I can't remember 10 seconds, so it had to be 5. So it's very simple, but I don't claim it to be easy. In fact, if spiritual practice is easy, you're not doing it. Bad news. But humor is very important because it's best not to take ourselves too seriously. We can take our religion seriously, we can take our politics seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. And that's where humor plays a part. So to start with, I'd like to make a little bit of a distinction between knowledge and wisdom, because wisdom's part of the equation. And knowledge, as I understand it, tells you the way the world works. So it's an accumulation of facts and theories and observations, things we've learned, things we've read about, things people have told us. And that's very important. We wouldn't have any financial debt if it wasn't for wisdom going to school. But wisdom tells us how to be in the world. So wisdom for me is a type of presence. People of wisdom have a presence. Knowledge tells us that suffering exists. Wisdom shows us how to work with that suffering in the world. And finally, compassion asks, what can I do? Spiritual helpers ask, how can I help? This is the question for Nikolai in the story. How can I help? And particularly, how can I help in the suffering that for myself and for you and the world at large? How can we do that? And I think there are really 5 ways that we can use, pathways we can take to kind of develop wisdom and compassion in our lives. And I'm going to talk a little bit about them. They are ethical living, stabilizing the mind, benefiting others, understanding the nature of our thoughts, and touching the transcendent. Now, I think all religious traditions include these elements in some form. I think UUs and our liberal Christian friends really do emphasize ethical living and service to others. That's a big deal, big plus. But Buddhist practice is very intentional about including all 5. And so maybe we'll be talking about some things you're a little unfamiliar with today. So let's begin with number 1, and really the foundation. We can live ethically. Our first reading today was 12 foundational Buddhist precepts. And Buddhists have precepts that, when incorporated into our life, help reduce the suffering of human interactions. There's, as we know, potential for a lot of suffering in relationships. We all have been there. The stories you could tell. So these precepts include things like not lying, not stealing, not killing, a warning about sexual misconduct, misuse of drugs and alcohol, unskillful speech. In fact, a lot of the precepts are around the way we talk to each other, the way we talk to ourselves. So if you can master these precepts, your life and the lives of the people around you just got a whole lot easier. A whole lot easier. Precepts are not commandments, they are guidelines. And we are always missing the mark. But they're very, very practical. We have all experienced the consequences of family and friends who suffer from drug and alcohol addiction, anger issues. The list goes on and on and on. Our prisons are filled with it. They're filled with it. So if to incorporate some behavioral guidelines into our life reduces the friction around relationships. And these guidelines are, again, implied imperfectly because we are imperfect people. But living ethically to the best of our ability is job 1. Just do that. Just do that. That's it. Man, there's so much suffering would be reduced if we just did that. But there's 4 more things I got to talk about. So we can stabilize the mind. And we use contemplative practices such as meditation, prayer, lectio divina. We do ritual. There's lots of ways that we can bring our practice into the present moment, because the present moment, this is it. This is what we've got. It's just now and now and now Just the present moment. So a stabilized mind is a gateway to wisdom. A stabilized mind is more tranquil, it's more flexible, it's more adaptable, and it is less reactive. That's a big one. Our buttons don't get pressed quite as much if you have a stabilized mind. And I like the image of a mind that is still like water. A pool so still that you can see clearly all the way to the bottom. And if you don't know what that looked like, go to the Fall River, which is south of town off, just a little bit to the west. It's a spring-fed river. It's a great trout fishing river. But you can get on that river and you can see all the way to the bottom. It's crystal clear. And that's what the mind becomes. I like this phrase from the Bible. We cultivate a mind, a quiet mind, so we can realize the peace that surpasses understanding, the peace that is under what the mind tells us. And we're going to sing a song a little bit later from Johnny Nash. It says, I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in the way. So the stabilized mind sees clearly. And when you have one of those aha moments, I know that you've all had, you are seeing clearly. So wisdom is a product of a stabilizing mind. And our world, again, is just this moment, this moment, this moment, this moment. The past and future are just fabrications of the mind. And if you can manage the present, you can control your future. You can keep your head when everybody else may be losing theirs. So the fruits of a stabilized mind are very important. The next one is we can live in a way that benefits others. This is really what the story we had today with Nikolai was about. And we move the center of our concern from me to thee. From the Bible, again, I love this verse. You are a light that benefits the world. Imagine, you're a light that benefits the world. A lot of people don't see that. They don't see the light. So to practice this way is to practice with an open heart. And one of the people I think really exemplifies this is a person you're all intimately know because you've watched him on television for years. His name was Fred Rogers. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Either you were raised with it, your kids were raised with it, or your grandkids were raised with it. But we know Mr. Rogers. But Mr. Rogers exemplifies what wisdom looks like, what wisdom feels like, what wisdom sounds like. And if you think Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was just a children's program, there were a lot of adults that took a deep breath and relaxed when they heard Mr. Rogers' voice. And so I invite you to revisit Mr. Rogers. Go to one of the old shows and just rest in his presence and get a feel for that. One of Fred Rogers' teaching, which I think is a very valuable lesson for our times, he tells this story. He said, when I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, boy, that's still going on. He said, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. To this day, he said, especially in times of disaster, I remember my mother's words, and I am always comforted by realizing that there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in the world. And that's our job, to be one of those people. Be one of the helpers. Number 4, we can look into the nature of our thoughts. And this is a uniquely Eastern practice. And you'd say, well, why would I want to do that? Because actually what we're doing is we're studying our mind. So to look into the nature of our thoughts is to understand the source of our suffering and our confusion. So literally, we study our own minds. And the mind can be a pretty rough neighborhood to hang out in. It can be a source of a lot of personal and planetary suffering. So let's not be at the mercy of the negative stories we tell ourselves, of the inner critic who is always talking about you're not good enough, you should have did this, you might have done that. What were you thinking of? You don't have to buy into that stuff. You don't have to do that. One of my favorite quotes is from Mark Twain, famously said, "My life has been one catastrophe after another, most of which never happened." Think on those things. My life has been one catastrophe after another, most of which never happened. Isn't that the truth? A lot of our emotional suffering is self-induced. And in the quiet mind, we can watch our thoughts. And they can reveal to us some of our own karmic influences, the baggage that we're carrying around. We've got this big bag that we're carrying around, and we need to be able to see it. Without awareness, there are no options. You have to see it. So we can notice that impermanence also is a part of what happens with the thoughts. The thoughts come and the thoughts go. Even on the little period of meditation, thoughts come in, thoughts move out, just like clouds in the sky. You can realize that they aren't running the show. You can set them aside, and that can be really freeing to do that. But there's another observation about thoughts, and this is one that I find very important and useful for me. It's a special kind of thought. It's judgmental thoughts. Ever had any of those? I mean, it's like 90% of my life. But here's the key point here. Judging others and loving others are inverses of each other. Judging others and loving others are inverses of each other. When Jesus tells us to love your enemy, he is telling you, do not judge your enemy. Don't do it. Don't do it. Do not judge others. Even discernment is a dangerous, slippery slope if it takes you down the self-righteousness path. So the more you judge others, the more you lessen your ability to love. Those who hate the most love the least. It's the law. It's no other way. I don't know if that's 100% of the time or 80 or 70, but there's some truth there. Those who hate the most love the least. So that's why there is no room for hate in a religion of love. It ain't possible. It ain't possible. And the same thing in relationships. You're deluding yourself. Last week we had a singer here, Mark Levy. He made this point. He sang, I think the first song he sang was, I Felt Love. And that song was in relation to the fact that he had a lot of judgment in his life. And when he could touch the love, there was no room for the hate. So we need to look into the nature of our thoughts. And finally, we can touch the transcendent. So what are we transcending, actually? Well, ultimately, we're transcending the small self, the ego-driven life. All religions remind us that there is something greater than I, me, mine. There's something greater than me. And at some level, we know that, and we want to touch it. We want to touch it. When we remove ourselves from the center of the universe, our universe, the one we've created and put ourselves at the middle of, then we have access to what the Celtic Christians call thin places. Thin places. We can enter something greater, call it the mystery, call it wonder. We recognize these thin places. When you walk out into the night sky here in Central Oregon, you go into the Badlands, you look up at that starry sky. Where did you go? Where did the self go? You look at the snowflakes coming down on an evening through a street light. A thin place. Where did you go? You're not there. The self just drops away, even just for a moment. So to touch the transcendent is to live in the now. It's a place of wonder. And it's not separate from who we are really at our core level. We just don't see it. We don't allow ourselves to touch it. Beauty's all around us. We don't see it. We don't see it. It's there. Just look. It's there. It's there. And this is also like being in the flow. Perhaps you've heard that phrase, he's in the flow. When you're in the flow, there's no self that's in the flow. And again, we can touch this transcendence in a lot of different ways. We talked about nature, but you can do it through music, art, athletic endeavors. There's so many gateways to this. And it's a place of lightness, open-heartedness, and wonder. So here are this is my 5-second Buddhist elevator speech with another 15 minutes tacked onto it. Equal portions of wisdom and compassion in 5 steps. Ethical living, stabilizing the mind, benefiting others, understanding the nature of thought, and touching the transcendent. So this is my Buddhism in a nutshell. But don't take my word for it. Don't believe a word I tell you. It's all a lie until you make it your own. So may it be so. I think Randy's going to take us into one of my favorite songs. We're going to go back to the 70s with Johnny Nash. Take it away.
So we're going to do this with a YouTube that's going to come up, and so you're going to stand, and I want you to be able to move around on this. But it's kind of like karaoke. It's kind of like church karaoke. Okay. Hit it.
I can see clearly now the rain is gone.
Very good.
I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's gonna be bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be bright, bright, sunshiny day. I think I can make it now. The pain is gone. All of the bad feelings have disappeared. Here is the rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be bright, bright, sunshiny day. Look all around, there's nothing but blue sky. Look straight ahead, nothing but blue sky. I can see clearly now the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's gonna be bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be bright, bright, sunshiny day. Gonna be bright,
Please remain standing and join together in the unison reading of our covenant as Tom extinguishes our chalice. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Okay, before I have closing words, an invitation. Years ago, when this fellowship was really small, and I was there, we had this practice. We would invite the congregation to add their insights to the topic that was discussed. So at the close of the service today, starting about 15 minutes, You can join me if you like in the Linus Pauling Room, and we'll spend a few minutes adding your thoughts and insights through the discussions. So perhaps we'll see you there. Hear these closing words. Simple in concept, but hard to do. It's just wisdom and compassion. So be that person that sees clearly now, that sees all obstacles in the way. And if you do, it'll be a bright, 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 sunshiny day. May it be so.